We are invited in this last lesson of the Silsila School of Mercy to reflect on the topic Materialism and Radicalism, the present threats to Muslims and Christians' dialogue toward peace and harmony. The Silsila School of Mercy was launched last May on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the Silsila Summer Course of Muslim-Christian Dialogue and on the occasion of the Jubilee of Mercy launched by Pope Francis. It is an opportunity to deepen the spirit of mercy and compassion in Christianity and Islam and face together materialism and radicalism. Urged by these challenges, we try to understand more the signs of the time, inspired by the spirit of mercy and compassion, together as a Christians, as a Muslim. More often today, we hear Muslims accusing the Christians as responsible for the increasing secularism and materialism in the world, and the Christians accusing the Muslims for the increasing radicalism and violence in the world today. Thus, facing these realities, we are called to present our topic today with humility, knowing that Christianity and Islam have some responsibilities for the many forms of violence caused by materialism and radicalism in the world. But both religions can also help to overcome this situation, revisiting the spirit of peace and harmony, guided by the cultural dialogue that is a style of life that creates an atmosphere of mercy and compassion in this world of globalization. Aware of the vast area of this topic, I decided to choose some specific points, dividing the presentation in three parts. First, materialism and secularism. Second, fundamentalism, radicalism with violence. And the last, mercy and compassion, sustained by the cultural dialogue path to peace. Indeed, we are invited to face these topics together with humility, but also with courage and determination, aware that the purpose of the Silsila School of Mercy is not only educational in terms of knowledge, but also inspirational, to touch the minds and hearts of Muslims and Christians to understand the present threat that we have to face together with new minds and hearts in the spirit of mercy and compassion. It is possible to enter into this new dimension of understanding a journey together and to overcome the temptation to live in denial, trying to ignore the signs of the time and the threat that we see in our own religion and in society today. I try to share this topic with the open heart, try to say as much as possible in the time that I have, knowing that it is painful to accept mistakes on a personal and historical level, especially with related to a group or religion that is dear to us. So the first part, materialism and secularism. We present here materialism and secularism as entry point to understand better the phenomenon of radicalism in the context of the present reality. So materialism, what is that? A society that forgets the centrality of God tends to put self-interest at the center of all, forgetting that we are part of the harmonious system created by God out of love and mercy. If we break this order of God, that is the real peace, we enter into a stage of violence. In the history of humanity, we know that how many times human beings has often moved far from the order and the commandments of God, giving space to the human inclination of sin. This is clear also in the history of humanity that we find in some stories commonly known in the Holy Bible, the Holy Quran. The most common of these stories are, for instance, the story of Adam and Eve, the story of Cain and his brother Abel, the story of Noah, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, the story of Joseph, in the Quran, Yusuf, and his brother, the story of the golden cow, etc. Indeed, humanity tends to forget that we are formed by body and soul, and we are called to answer to the spiritual and human needs in the balanced way. In the course of history, we have also philosophers and ideologies emphasizing priority of material needs, forgetting the balance that we have to maintain always. Gandhi reminds us, one of his famous statements is, the world can answer to the need of all, but not to the greed of all. This is one of the messages of to our materialistic society. People often forget these things. While we take care of our needs, we do not have to forget the needs of the others. We try to reflect here how religions can contribute to build harmony in the world if we understand properly the deeper meaning of the different religions, which answer to the inner desire to know more about our life, our future, our sufferings, and the life after death. Unfortunately, sometimes people who follow a specific religion can create situations of disharmony. So, what is secularism? We start from a definition. Secularism is the principle of the separation of government, institutions, and persons mandated to represent the state from religious institutions, religious dignitaries. One manifestation of secularism is asserting the right to be free from religious rule and teachings, or in a state declared to be neutral on no matter or belief from the imposition by the government of religion or religious practices upon his people. Another manifestation of secularism is the view that public activities and decisions, especially political ones, should be uninfluenced by religious belief or practices. The purposes and arguments in support of secularism are many. For instance, in Europe, like Laicism, it has been argued that secularism is a movement toward modernization and away from traditional values. That is known also as secularization. This type of secularism on a social or philosophical level has often occurred while maintaining an official state, church, or other state support of religion. Christianity and Islam has two different ways of understanding secularism, as we can see later on. Now, the second part, fundamentalism, I put also radicalism with violence. We explain the terms. We divide this presentation in 3 points. First of all, fundamentalism. The concept of modern religious fundamentalism was introduced with the publication of the Fundamentals a series of books published between 1909 and 1920, appealing to Christians to believe in certain religious doctrine of Christianity. The term fundamentalist was so soon used to describe a section of Protestant Christians who bore a separatist attitude toward modernization. In the latter years, the term was used to relate to the most extreme believers of every religions in the world. Now, religious fundamentalism. We can find forms of fundamentalism in many sectors of society, and it often takes different names, but we focus here on the religious fundamentalism. It refers to the belief of an individual or a group of individuals in an absolute authority of a sacred religious text or teaching of particular religious leader or prophet or God. This fundamentalism believe, or the fundamentalists believe, that their religion is beyond any form of criticism. The fundamentalist religious dictate every sphere of their daily life, and they also attempt to involve the entire society into their own belief system, often by the use of force. Most religions in the world tend to be associated with fundamentalist elements. We start to have a short list with some idea. Christian fundamentalism, who have absolute belief in the words of the Holy Bible, are found everywhere in the Christian world. In the earlier part of the 12th century, Christian fundamentalists, such as those in the United States, Protestants against the theory of evolution put forward by Darwin, and also supported to be against the sale of liquor. We have also the Jewish fundamentalists. It's quite prevalent in Israel, where Jewish fundamentalists make constant effort to establish Orthodox Jewish culture in the region and enforce strict adherence to the halakha, the Jewish religious law, in every aspect of Israel life. The Islamic fundamentalism believe in the literal interpretation of the Holy Quran and Hadith, and attempt to enforce the Sharia law into every aspect of Islamic life. Islamic fundamentalism grew in the later years as well, and currently exists as a base for a legal system in many Islamic states around the world. We explain better this concept. Hinduism, there is also fundamentalism today. Being the world's most ancient religion, does not assign supreme authority to any particular sacred text, nor to single prophet or God. Hinduism is a complex of multiplied sets of beliefs advocated by a large number of holy books. Hence, the universal belief of this religion continue to be part of sometimes of fundamentalistic spirit. Believers of Buddhism, they have little fundamentalism, since this religion is based on the advocacy of peace and non-violence. Violent enforcement of any kind is not practiced by the followers of these religions. This short synthesis on fundamentalism related to religions helped me to enter into the central part of this presentation, that it's radicalism with violence, aware that if we do not face it, we cannot overcome it. And if we cannot help each other to change what is wrong, we are in trouble. I'm convinced that the silent majority of the people has a voice, and we have to help in sharing this voice, be with them, guiding them in the spirit of mercy and compassion. So now, radicalism with violence. This expression, radicalism with violence, it's a way for me to enter into the different form of religious radicalism that sometimes become terrorism, practiced by some groups present in many parts of the world and also in Mindanao. I avoid to present it as Islamic radicalism, although today, most of the time, people understand that we relate religious radicalism to Islam, and this causes pain, especially to the many Muslim people who suffer like the other of us for the increasing violence with religious color. I do not emphasize here the Christian radicalism with violence that we find in the history of Christianity, because that aspect of history has passed, fortunately, especially in the Catholic Church after Vatican II. From that time on, the official teaching and practice of Catholics has been faithful to the mission of dialogue, although this aspect can improve. But we do not have cases of religious violence today on the part of the Christians. It is clear for us that countries with Christians background, which have many responsibility in the world today and practice violence, are not acting in the name of Christianity. Thus, the Western civilization do not represent Christianity, or they do not take decision in the political arena in the name of Jesus or in the name of the church. This is the basic difference today between the Muslim and the Christians. This is the center point of our reflection and our challenge today. As a Christian and Catholic priest, I present this aspect of religious radicalism with violence, with humility, considering that the past history of Christianity was also a sign with violence. At the same time, we do not indicate here any group internationally, nationally, or local that can be classified in the category of radicalism with violence. I make this presentation with the hope that I can help to understand the gravity of the situation. Muslim and Christian in our place are alarmed of the increasing violence that is presented and justified in the name of religious radicalism. We are called to be united and to move together with courage in the spirit of mercy. We have presented in the previous topic of School of Mercy the concept of jihad as a struggle, if we remember, in the stage of purification of the heart and intention, as aspect of jihad that we wish to be applied in society. This is one of the inspiring points of my mission of dialogue and peace. When I proposed to the Muslim Christian friends in Zamboanga city the Silsila dialogue movement, I encouraged the Christian to revisit and refocus their dialogue inspired by the beatitude of Jesus, and to the Muslim to refocus and revisit the concept of the great jihad inspired by the struggle toward the purification of the hearts and minds. These 2 points that I proposed since the beginning remain, and we have to reaffirm them in our spiritual journey that we call pilgrimage of dialogue and peace. There is a little story that I like always to remind to our students when they come here about the story when Prophet Muhammad was with a companion coming from one of their activities. It was fighting against a certain group. And the people, the companion said to Prophet Muhammad, what will be next? No? And he said, we are moving from the jihad to a great jihad. And the companion didn't understand. That is one hadith. And he explained, it's the purification. The great jihad is the purification of the heart. It's a struggle inside ourselves. Unfortunately, people give so much emphasis to the jihad in terms of holy war. There is a lot of misunderstanding on that point. But for dialogue, I believe this concept of the great jihad, because from the great jihad, from the purification of the heart, there is an attitude of reconciliation, an attitude of looking at other people with the new eyes, with new heart.
And it seems, I think, if I may say so, forgiveness is a cornerstone in the teachings of Christianity. And I think this is very attractive, so to speak, for Christianity, considering other faiths, for example, even from the point of view of other faiths, Islam, for example, in particular, because sometimes we say there are even, although I cannot know the Arabic, there are even passages in the Holy Quran that I was told that will allow something like a revenge, which is, I would say, very negative in the dialogue approach.
So that is in the back of my mind was that concept of purification, that it's very true in Islam, but also in Christianity. Unfortunately, we are often confronted with acts of violence, using jihad in the name of God. Many of us have heard and seen many forms of brutality in Mindanao, in other parts of the world, justified violence in the name of jihad. Are these people only bad elements to stop, or religious people who are convinced that this is the way to fulfill their religious obligation? This is a big question. Of course, all, including the Muslim world, condemn brutalities, killings, bombing, and other forms of violence. But those who act in this way believe that it's part of their understanding of religion, most probably, or they are forced to believe in that way because somebody powerful is behind. Thus, the big question is, who put in their mind the ideology of violence? Today, the situation is becoming more complicated and alarming because there is an increasing violence, sometimes justified by religions. All of us, Muslim Christians, who believe in the message of mercy and compassion, are disturbed of the alarming use of violence with religious color. That become more common in Mindanao, also in other parts of the world. We are also disturbed because some young people join some specific group that clearly advocate violence. We can remember different stages of the history when forms of violence were present also among the Christians, especially among the Catholic and Protestant groups in Europe. The term used to justify violence and wars were many, and the reason behind were often related to power struggle. To reach a stage of radicalism, with violence, usually there are steps to follow. For example, the recent attempt of the killing of an Arabic scholar in Zamboanga by a student reveals that he didn't act alone. It seems that he entered into an ideological teaching of some groups, sometimes also through internet. It seems also that it was a plan and a coordination, including a promise of money, etc. And then, what people see and hear related to this form of violence, it's only the tip. There is much more behind an act of violence generally, but also in relation to religious radicalism with violence that is the focus of our attention here. The situation is indeed serious today. We cannot continue to say that this violence comes from a small group. Thanks to God, it is still a small group of people who execute acts of violence, but the effect is big, and we have to reflect and act with responsibility in society. The first stage of this phenomenon of violence linked to the religion is the spreading of ideologies that have seed for ideas of violence. In this context, I bring a specific example of an ideology that can open the way to violence if we apply in the way it is spread here and there today and in different parts of Mindanao. I try to express this point starting from a personal experience. In a gathering organized by Silsila, a young Muslim participant told me, "Father, I'm grateful to Silsila that gave to me the clear orientation of dialogue and peace. I was guided before by the concept given to me by some Muslim leaders and scholars that there will be no peace in the world until there is only one religion, and this religion is Islam." I can say that that young participant, what he told me in the past was probably also the thinking of Christian groups. This can explain the many mistakes of the church, especially in the past when church was identified with the power of the world. Islam became visible in the world after 6th century of Christianity. This is a reflection that can help. After 6th century of Christianity, and it seems that it's repeating the same or similar mistakes of Christians. 6th century ago, Christianity was in a similar stage of Islam today in relation to this issue of violence using political power. The wisdom to separate the power of the religion from the power of politics has helped the Christians to rebuild the identity of the Christian life. Of course, the separation is in the sense that each Christian is a good Christian, even in position in society, continue to be a good Christian, apply the principle. This is what we learn, we try to communicate in this school of mercy. This reflection and action inside the church it's in progress. We cannot say that it's perfect, but it is happening through a painful process of rethinking, rebuilding the mission of love, solidarity, mercy, and reconciliation that Jesus preached in the world. In this process of reflection, the Catholic Church, after Vatican II, reviewed the Catholic Catechism. Among the other things, introduced in this catechism, it is not anymore justified, the just word. Before it was the principle, okay, the just word, it's okay. Thus today, any violence is done by the West or countries with a Christian background and civilization are not done in the name of God or in the name of a specific religion, of Christian religion. We know that there are Muslim scholars, they are open to rethink the mission of Islam in the context of today, giving more space to the reflection and consensus in line with the source of Islamic religion. But often they have a strong opposition on the part of some groups who have a strong voice among Muslim scholars, and these leaders often live in fear. Sometimes I think that common concept of the holy word we heard many times can be applied in another way, like a holy fear. A fear of those who wish to give a positive contribution among Muslim scholars and ustad, can be also among the Christian, but in this moment we talk in the context of Islam, but they are afraid to act and to talk. The sharing of the Muslim participants in Silsila mentioned above bring me to main insight. There are many respected Muslim leaders today who hope that the concrete transformation can happen in Islam, in Islamic way. If not, the ideology of violence will be spread more. I encourage some Muslim leaders to overcome what I call the holy fear, and I find the way to express the idea. They have to express the idea and to stop to spread ideologies where Islam does not show the real face of peace and mercy, but the face of violence. That is not the mission of Islam in the world. There are also many good stories that I can share that are encouraging. I often find time to meet some Muslim friends and share with them what we can do more to help our society to create a better understanding and respect among Muslim and Christian. Before I continue with this reflection and present some alarming ideologies that today circulate in the world of Islam, Muslim world, I would like to say that not only some of my friends share to me their desire to build a good relation among Muslim and Christian, but also some Muslim leaders of the world are moving in that direction. One of the most relevant experience I can remember of this year, coming from the Muslim scholars of the world, is the open letter of 138 Muslim leaders of the world that they sent to Pope Benedict XVI in 2007. They sent a letter also to other Christian leaders of the world. The name of this open letter is A Common Word Between Us and You. Beautiful. This letter presents the love of God, the love of neighbor in Islam, in Christianity. At the beginning of the letter, there is a beautiful message that we have to remember. Muslim and Christian, this letter say, together make up well over half of the world population. Without peace and justice between these two religious communities, there can be no meaningful peace in the world. The future of the world depends on peace between Muslim and Christian. This is a quotation of the open letter. This encouraging move on the part of the Muslim scholars of the world can help the Muslim Ummah to create a praxis of dialogue and peace among Christians and Muslims and people of other religions in the world. If not, Islam will continue to be prisoner of some ideology. All of us are prisoners. Christianity also is prisoner of the ideology. For sure, the open letter, a common word, it's a good beginning, but there is still a lot to show in the Muslim world that is also alarming, and I try to say a few points that can help to reflect. There is an interesting story, an article in Time magazine of September 13, 2004. The title is The Struggle Within Islam, and the subtitle is Struggle for the Soul of Islam, 3 years after 9/11, an inside look at the ongoing global battle between moderate and hardliner over the future of a faith and its relationship with the West. The author is Bill Powell. Shared a story of a father who was so alarmed of a child was so entering in the so-called hardliner, but after he changed, he understood the real spirit of Islam. We know that the United Nations presented the first 10 years of the new millennium as the 10 years of harmony among civilizations. But what happened? A lot of dreams of new millennium, unfortunately, starting from 9/11, 2001, we have a stage of violence. And after the invasion of Iraq and increasing animosity and anger in the world. The report continued to present the different stages that have shaped Islam in the history up to now and the different movements that are at the base of religious radicalism with violence that is visible in different groups with Islamic identity. I try to explain this concept with an experience. I am often invited to different countries to share the experience of dialogue that Silsila promotes in Mindanao. I'm always try to explain some points that usually I said what we do, and I conclude saying that the mission of Silsila is an expression of dialogue as love in action, silence, and harmony. And often I add that Silsila has a mission to remain a sign of hope. In this connection, I remember that years ago I was invited to Lebanon in a university with scholars of different countries, and I represented the Philippines and the Silsila dialogue movement. What happened? In that occasion, I was touched especially by a presentation. The presentation of Hamad Musalli, a scholar of the University of Beirut. The title of this presentation was Islamic Fundamentalism, Perception of Other Monotheistic Religions. He explained different Islamic movements on the history and especially the theory that I believe is part of the ideology presented to the Muslim youth who today, even that Muslim youth was part of the Silsila activity, and he said there will be no peace in the world until there is no one religion, and this religion is Islam. Of course, this is in contrast with the understanding of Silsila, which Silsila promotes harmony among religion. But the professor continue to say something that is good to know. Make a long and acute lecture related to his topic that I share in some parts now. He started outlining the analysis of radical fundamentalism, then moderate fundamentalism. About the radical fundamentalism, he said the best representative is Sayyid Qutb, who believed that the whole universe is living a stage of paganism, Jahiliyyah. Thus, the relation between the Islamic society and not-Islamic ones are based on a trend of mutual annihilation. He believes that Islam cannot coexist under not-Islamic political order. Now, he said, the creed is being revived in order that the Muslim world will regain its power. It's a point of reflection. Of course, this is not Islam, the official Islam, but idea that circulate. These few points give an idea how dangerous is a theory like this. And it spread also in Mindanao in different forms. Most of the radical fundamentalist group in the Arabic world, and especially in Egypt, have been influenced both directly and indirectly by the Qutban radical exclusivism, the Sayyid idea. We can conclude this part, say that in our place we also have different groups with different orientation, interpretation of Islam. They have different names, different leaders, and different nations and groups who sustain them. Thus, what will be the future of our dialogue in Mindanao, considering that it's becoming more difficult with new radical violent groups who claim to do this in the name of their religion? Some say that Islam today is prisoner of those who justify these strategies presented, and in the name of Allah that give a motivation. And what is more alarming, that even some Muslim groups today are accused, they are considered infidel, kafir. In a recent book of Massimo Borghese entitled If Politics Absorbs Theology, he makes a nice analysis. He said that the position of the Christian faith in relation to politics is a theology of politics, not a political theology. There is a difference. This has a lot of implication. It leaves to the politicians the responsibility to govern, guided by the theology of politics, and not make a theology that answers to the needs and the ambition of the politicians. The Arabic Spring, a movement of revolution in different Islamic countries years ago, show us the problem open between Islam and politics. An accepted starting point for many Muslims, as well as several Orientalists, is the fact that there would be no separation of religion from politics in Islam, and that the very idea of secularization as separation of the state from religion, therefore, would not make sense. Beginning from the year 1920s and on, some authors began to understand more what is this Islamic state. For instance, in Egypt, in Tunisia, they spend time and months to discuss the position of the word Islam in the constitution before arriving at the solution that reflects political compromises between the various factors making up parliaments. solutions that are not in any way the expression of a theological research. Whichever way we look at the situation, the idea that political decisions are subject to the religious law does not hold. This is the idea of many Muslim leaders. Since the act of decision that the meaning of religion become for a political act, so it is politics that guide the religion. The few points of reflection shared above tell us that an act of violence done as a religious radicalism today, we have to ask, is done by bad elements or others? There are often ideologies that are used and abused by politicians with vested interests. Thus, what to do? It is not the use of force that will help to improve the situation. Maybe it can help only temporarily, but a new theological reflection that Islamic Ummah is doing today and many other voices move in this direction are important to be listened. It is not easy at this point. Even the Al-Azhar University of Cairo, with the famous University of Islam, in spite of the fact that it is so important and respected by many, have difficulties to go against some radical ideas. I will not be surprised that sometimes some of this group will consider kafir, infidel, also the teacher of Al-Azhar. Will be absurd, but this can happen. This is an irony of the situation today when all of us, Muslim, Christian, and people of other faith who believe in dialogue and peace are facing.
People of all religious persuasions are called to rediscover the God of dialogue. Christians are invited to read the Holy Bible, focusing on the basic Christian concept of love.
In these words, I begin to see how true it is that God shows no partiality.
Muslims read the Holy Quran, focusing on the basic concept of surrendering to Allah. Understanding the deeper meaning of mercy and compassion. The same spirit of dialogue can be offered to people of other living faiths. All of us are called to rethink deeply the meaning of compassion and other dialogical elements of our faith traditions.
Now, the third part, the spirit of mercy and compassion, a common ground to sustain the culture of dialogue path to peace. Pope Francis, in his next Day of Peace in the World 2017, already gave to us the theme, no violence, a style of politics for peace. The Silsila School of Mercy, it's a way to prepare all of us to a more active participation, to transform the present violence in non-violence approach, a peace that Silsila called active harmony paradigm. We started the Silsila Dialogue movement in 1984 during the martial law time, and soon we gave attention to Muslim-Christian dialogue, telling to all that the way to achieve dialogue is to a spirituality or life in dialogue. This approach was quite unusual at the time, but we insisted that this is for us the way to have a sustainable dialogue and to build up a culture of dialogue path to peace. The term culture of dialogue was still new. Our definition of cultural dialogue is an holistic approach of dialogue that emphasizes the human and spiritual dimension of life in dialogue with God, with the self, with others, and with creation. It is a style of life marked by the deeper relation among people of different culture and religion. We challenge them to build together a society where God's value and ethics are the guiding principle in moving together toward harmony, solidarity, and peace. We start to say the dialogue is not only a strategy but a spirituality. A dialogue is not only a means to achieve peace, but it is a goal in itself, because for us dialogue is an expression of love. Along the years we developed concepts, say dialogue is love in action, to make the spirituality of life in dialogue a concrete answer to the signs of the time. We also added the dialogue is also an expression of love in silence, because the listening aspect of dialogue that often remind us the long process of dialogue is important. The process of the suffering in the different journey of dialogue is part of the process of building the culture of dialogue. This is important if we consider the stages of history with a lot of animosity, conflicts and prejudice between Muslims and Christians. We say also that this dialogue is a form of love in harmony, because our goal is to influence society by a culture of love that generates harmony. Thus, it is a dialogue that becomes a style of life, a dialogue that has to be cover the 24 hours of a day, a dialogue that has 4 important aspects that we identify as a pillar of dialogue. And we say dialogue with God, dialogue with the self, dialogue with others, and dialogue with creation.
The first assignment of Father Sebastiano de Ambra was in an area separated by a river from the town of Siocon. He had to walk through rice fields and towards the forest. The first thing that deeply touched his heart was the simplicity and the hospitality of the people. The smile of the children and the simple dreams of the young people made him keenly aware of the difference between the society he left in Italy and this place where he was now. They gave him, through their kindness and hospitality, more than what he could give them. In behalf of the people of Bukana, Siocon, Barangay Captain Haji Muin Sangkula welcomes Father Seb and expresses their collective gratitude for his friendship. He learned many things from the people that he could not learn in school. This education from the school of the poor cannot leave us peaceful. This disturbance within us urges us to do more and to do better, always searching for new signs from God in big as well as ordinary events that unfold before our very eyes. He was a priest without a church, without a Christian community, without specific work to do. This was his choice, to live a simple life with his Muslim friends, learn their language, listen to their stories, and share his kindness to all.
When we started to make this presentation of the cultural dialogue, people used to think that the dialogue is an answer to a problem. So why this cultural dialogue? In the process, we realized that became clear any form of dialogue is to be sustained by the spirituality of dialogue with God, ourselves, others, and creation. About the dialogue with creation, I can make this note. I can say that many at the beginning were not aware of the importance of dialogue with creation, but now it is one of the most challenging aspects of dialogue that can also help to consolidate and give light to the other pillars of dialogue. In an international conference in Davao City 10 years ago, I was invited with others involved in different activities of dialogue and peace by well-known scholars and theologians of the world. All of us were invited to present our approach of dialogue. At the end, with my great surprise and joy, the resource person and the scholars who invite us make a synthesis and said the trend of dialogue in the world, they say today, it's in the line of spirituality, and for dialogue it's important to promote dialogue through spirituality. Often I say to friends, if one day we will be invited in another country to share the spirit of dialogue of Silsila, for instance in Japan, we have to have a dialogue with the Buddhists especially, or in India we have to have a dialogue with Hindus and others. So this means that Silsila focus of dialogue here, Christians and Muslims, is because this is the composition of the population here, but the cultural dialogue is a holistic approach of dialogue that has to be lived and promoted in all places and with all people of sincere heart who are willing to promote this dialogue. Often we simply say, instead of cultural dialogue, we say dialogue and peace. This point bring me to the conclusion, because another great surprise and joy for me in line with the promotion of the spirituality of life in dialogue in Silsila was when the United Nations in the year 2010 proposed the Word in Their Faith Harmony Week based on the love of God, the love of neighbor, and the love of common good. We in Silsila reflected that this is what we have promoted for many years, and we decided to give a special attention to this initiative in many ways. And we are today in the front line on national level in the promotion of the Word in Their Faith Harmony Week. Indeed, the cultural dialogue is a form of spirituality that starts from a personal transformation, has to reach the level of social transformation. It is a long process. Along the way, we experience joyful moments, but also painful moments. A few months ago, we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Silsila Summer Course on Muslim-Christian dialogue, and we also decide to have a gathering of the alumni of Silsila. They are thousands, the alumni around the world, the Philippines, who have attended to our courses of Silsila starting from 1987. One of the highlights of this celebration was the tribute to those alumni who have been killed in Zamboanga, Basilan, and Olo in their commitment of dialogue in their specific mission. We identified 4 of them, 1 bishop and 3 priests, but maybe there are others who have died in their mission of dialogue and peace, inspired by the vision of Silsila dialogue movement. Indeed, Silsila as a movement today is recognized and respected by many around the world. We have received national, international awards and prizes, but for me, the great joy is when I meet friends in many places and they tell me that thanks to Silsila, they live in a different way. Their life is changed. I close this presentation with a simple experience chosen among the so many that helped me to say always that Silsila is a sign of hope in the midst of so many suffering and violence. One day, I was in the airport in Manila waiting for the plane coming back to Zamboanga. At a certain point, in the midst of the crowd, a young man called me by name and said, "Father Seb, I am an alumno of Silsila. I'm a Maranao. Years ago," he said, "I attended to the Silsila Sama course. At that time, I was very radical in the understanding of Islamic faith. I was educated to go against the Christians as part of a training in ideology. In fact, I went to Silsila with this critical mind to understand personally what Silsila teaches. Well, at the end of the course, I was convinced of the Silsila spirit, and now I promote dialogue. I have now a good position in educational system in Lanao." And after he told me many other touching stories in line with this effort in promoting dialogue. I hope and pray that Silsila School of Mercy can become for many of you and many others a starting point to rethink how to be good Christians and how to be good Muslims, living and promoting the spirit of mercy. Finally, I wish to say that my hope and prayer is that we can be passionate in the promotion of dialogue and peace. If there are those who are passionate to live a radical approach with violence, risking their life, why we are not passionate in promoting dialogue and peace in the spirit of mercy? We have to dream together a new society where Christians and Muslims love each other, and hope our example will reach far and tell to the world that in Zamboanga and in Mindanao, Christians and Muslims are guided by the spirit of mercy and compassion, living and promoting the culture of dialogue, path to peace, as an expression of love. God bless you all, and Padayon.